I bought a house for my son with all the love in my heart. I gave him the keys as the greatest gift any mother could give. But when I went to visit them, my daughter-in-law had already changed the locks and screamed at me that I had no right to be there. But what I did next left her completely horrified. If this story seems incredible to you, like and subscribe because what's coming will impact you even more. My name is Veronica. I'm 68 years old. Throughout my life, I worked like an ant to support my family. Since I became a widow 15 years ago, I dedicated myself body and soul to my only son, Jason. I worked double shifts at the textile factory. I cleaned offices at night. I sold homemade food on weekends. All so he could study and have a better life than mine. Every penny I earned, I invested in his education, his clothes, his needs. I wore the same clothes for years. I repaired my shoes when they broke. I ate rice and beans almost every day to save money. But seeing my son grow up and become a hardworking and responsible man was my greatest satisfaction. When Jason introduced me to Carmen 3 years ago, I thought he had found the perfect woman. She was polite, always spoke to me with a smile. She brought me flowers when she came to my house. She helped me in the kitchen during family gatherings. "Mrs. Veronica, you're like the mother I never had," she told me while hugging me. I loved her like a daughter. When they got married last year, I cried with happiness seeing my son so in love and fulfilled. During the wedding, Carmen whispered in my ear, "Thank you for raising the most wonderful man in the world. I promise to take care of him and love him as much as you did." Those words were engraved in my heart forever. The first months of marriage seemed like a fairy tale. Jason came to visit me every Sunday with Carmen. They talked about their plans, their dreams, their projects together. But I noticed there was something in my daughter-in-law's eyes that I couldn't identify. When I thought no one was looking, her expression changed completely. The smile disappeared from her face as if it were a mask she took off. One afternoon, while we were preparing lunch, I heard her talking on the phone in a low voice in the patio. "Don't worry, this is temporary. Soon we'll have our own house and we won't have to pretend anymore," she said with a cold voice I had never heard before. That same day, during lunch, Jason told me something that broke my heart. "Mom, Carmen and I have been thinking. We'd like to have our own house, to really start our family, to have our own space." I knew that with his salary as an accountant and hers as a secretary, it would take them years to save for a down payment on a decent house. Prices had gone up drastically, and young people today were going through very difficult times. That night, I couldn't sleep thinking about a decision that would change our lives forever. I had been saving for over 20 years. Every dollar I didn't spend on myself, I religiously saved in a bank account. I had $85,000, the result of decades of sacrifice and deprivation. It was my security in old age, my support in any medical emergency, my peace of mind for the future. But a mother's love is stronger than any fear, and I decided to give the greatest gift a mother could give, buying a house for my son. For weeks, I looked for the perfect property. I wanted something special, something worthy of the love I felt for Jason. Finally, I found a beautiful house in a quiet and safe neighborhood. 2 stories, 3 bedrooms, front and backyard, large kitchen, spacious living room. It cost exactly $180,000. It was perfect for them to start a family. I used all my savings to buy it, plus an additional $5,000 I borrowed from my sister Ernestine to cover the deed costs and legal procedures. The day I gave them the surprise was the happiest of my life. I invited them to my house on a Sunday afternoon, prepared their favorite food, and after dessert, I took the keys out of my purse. "My children," I said with tears in my eyes, "this is my way of showing you how much I love you." Jason was speechless when I explained that I had bought a house for them. He hugged me so tight I could barely breathe, crying like when he was a child. "Mom, I can't believe what you've done for us. You're the best mother in the world," he kept repeating. Carmen also cried, but now that I remember, there was something strange about her tears. Her eyes didn't reflect the same emotion as my son's. "Mrs. Veronica, this is incredible. I don't know how to thank you," she said, but her voice sounded calculated, almost rehearsed. However, I was so excited that I didn't pay attention to those details, which now, looking back, were clear red flags. I helped them move the following week. I carried boxes, cleaned every corner of the new house, painted the walls the color Carmen liked, planted flowers in the garden so it would look like paradise. My bones ached, my back hurt, but my heart was very happy to see my son start this new stage of his life in his own house. The last day of the move, while we were arranging the furniture, Carmen told me something that should have alerted me. "Mrs. Veronica, now that we have our house, We can live like an independent family, right? At that moment, I thought she meant they wouldn't need my financial help anymore, but her words had a much more sinister meaning. A week later, I decided to pay them a surprise visit. I had baked a chocolate cake, Jason's favorite since he was little, and bought some items for the house that I thought they might need. It was a Saturday afternoon. The weather was perfect, and I was walking towards their house with a smile on my face, imagining my son's happy face when he saw the homemade cake. I never imagined that afternoon my world would be completely destroyed, and that I would discover the true nature of the woman I had placed all my trust in. I arrived at the house I had bought with so much love and sacrifice. I rang the doorbell hoping to see my son's smile, but no one answered. I knew they were home because their car was parked in the garage and there was music playing inside. I knocked again, this time more insistently, and finally heard footsteps approaching the door. But what happened next left me completely paralyzed. The door opened just a crack, and Carmen's face appeared, but she wasn't the same sweet and loving woman I knew. Her expression was cold, almost hostile, and she looked at me as if I were an unwelcome stranger. "What do you want?" She asked me in such a dry tone that it took my breath away. I thought maybe she was joking, that at any moment she would smile and invite me in, as she always did. "Daughter, I came to visit you. I brought a cake for Jason and some things for the house," I told her, showing her the bag of gifts. But she didn't move away from the door. She made no gesture to let me in. Instead, she came out onto the porch and closed the door behind her with a sharp and final movement. "Veronica, I think you need to understand something. This is our house now, Jason's and mine. We need our private space, our couple time without interruptions." Her words hit me like a slap in the face. Interruptions. That's how she saw my visits, as interruptions. "But Carmen, I just wanted to spend time with you, like we always did. I'm Jason's mother. I bought this house with my life savings," I replied, trying to keep calm, although inside I felt like knives were being driven into my chest. "Exactly," she said with a smile that chilled my blood. "You already fulfilled your role as a mother. You already gave us the house. You already helped us become independent. Now let us live in peace as the couple we are. We don't need you coming to see us every time something occurs to you." The way she pronounced the word role made me understand that for her, I had been just a means to get what she wanted. At that moment, Jason appeared behind the living room window. I saw him through the glass and waved for him to come, but he looked at me with a strange expression and just disappeared from my sight. My own son, the child I held in my arms, whom I consoled when he cried, whom I fed with my own hands, was deliberately ignoring me. "Where is my son? I want to talk to him," I asked Carmen, but she crossed her arms and completely blocked my path. "Jason is busy and doesn't want visits today. Besides, he agrees with me that we need to establish boundaries. It's one thing for you to have bought this house, and another thing to think that gives you the right to come whenever you want, without warning." Every word she said was like a dagger straight to the heart. The woman who called me the mother she never had was now treating me like an annoying stranger. "Carmen, please, I don't understand what's happening. Did I do something wrong? Did I say something that offended you? I just want to know why you're treating me like this," I begged, with tears starting to form in my eyes. Never in my life had I felt so humiliated, so rejected by the people I loved most in the world. She laughed with a bitter and cruel laugh I had never heard. "What you did wrong, Mrs. Veronica? Don't you understand that your time has passed? We're young, we have our own lives, our own plans. We can't have an elderly lady coming to inspect everything we do, asking about every detail of our lives, giving opinions about how we should live." It was as if she were talking to a stranger, not the woman who had sacrificed everything for their happiness. "But I never supervised you. I never interfered in your private affairs. I only come to visit you because I love you, because you're my family," I replied with a voice broken by emotion. She couldn't understand how things had changed so much in so little time. "Your family was when Jason was single and depended on you. Now his family is me. I'm his wife. I'm his priority. I'm the one he's going to build the future with. You already fulfilled your role in his life. Now let him be free." Carmen's words were so venomous that I felt like they were slowly poisoning my soul. I tried to approach the door to speak directly with my son, but she extended her arms, blocking my passage. "No, ma'am. I'm going to make one thing very clear to you from now on. This house is ours, not yours. Just because you paid for it doesn't give you the right to come whenever you want. From today, if you want to visit us, you must call first and ask permission. And if we decide it's not a good time, you must respect our decision." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Asking permission to visit my own son in the house I had bought. Allowing this woman who until recently treated me like a saint? Carmen, I think you're exaggerating. I was never an intrusive mother-in-law. I always respected your marriage. I always supported you in everything. Supported, she interrupted me in a sarcastic tone. Mrs. Veronica, do you think that because you bought us this house you can continue treating Jason as if he were your little boy? But he's already a married man. He has responsibilities with me. He needs to learn to establish boundaries with his mother, and I'm here to help him do that. That's when something terrible occurred to me. You told my son not to let me in. You manipulated him to reject me. I looked directly into her eyes, searching for the truth, and what I saw confirmed all my suspicions. I don't manipulate anyone, she replied, but her malicious smile said otherwise. I simply opened his eyes to certain things. I made him see that an overly present mother can harm a marriage. He needs to show me that I'm his #1 priority, not you. You're a viper, I said, unable to contain myself any longer. You're a calculating and evil woman who is taking advantage of the love my son feels for you to take him away from me. But you're wrong if you think I'm going to allow you to destroy the relationship I have with him. Her expression changed completely. The mask of politeness fell completely and showed her true face. Listen to me carefully, ma'am. I already won this battle. Jason chose me, not you. This house is mine now. This life is mine and he is mine. You can kick and scream all you want, but the reality is that you no longer have a place in our lives. I bought this house. It's in my name. I have all the documents, I reminded her, trying to maintain some dignity amid so much humiliation. That's what you believe, she replied with a smile that chilled me to the bone. But things can change very quickly, Mrs. Veronica. Very quickly. There was something in her tone that scared me deeply, as if she were threatening me with something specific. Before I could ask what she meant by that, she turned around and went into the house, closing the door with a slam that resonated like a gunshot in my chest. I stood on the porch with the cake in my hands and a broken heart, not understanding how I had gotten into that nightmare. The house I had bought with so much love had become a prison that prevented me from seeing my own son. I knocked on the door once more with more desperation than hope. Jason, my son, please come out and talk to me. I'm your mother. We need to clear this up, I shouted with all my strength, but there was no response. Only the cruel silence of a house that had been built with my dreams, and now had become my worst nightmare. I returned to my house with shaky legs and a shattered soul, not knowing that this was just the beginning of a war that was about to become much more cruel and ruthless than my wildest dreams. I arrived home shaking like a leaf, with the cake still in my hands and my heart completely broken. I sat on my old sofa and cried like I hadn't cried since my husband's death. How was it possible that my son, my only son, had turned his back on me like that? How could I have allowed that woman to humiliate me at the door of the house I had bought with the sweat of my brow? I couldn't close my eyes all night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Carmen's evil smile. I heard her venomous words repeating over and over in my head. You already fulfilled your role as a mother. Those words pierced my soul. That's how my daughter-in-law saw me, as someone whose only role was to give them a house and then disappear from their lives. The next day, Sunday, I waited all morning for Jason to call me to apologize, to explain what had happened, to tell me it had all been a misunderstanding. But the phone didn't ring. At 2 p.m., I couldn't take it anymore and called him. The phone rang several times until he finally answered, but his voice sounded cold and distant, as if I were talking to a stranger. Hi, Mom, he said in a tone he had never used with me before. Jason, son, we need to talk. What happened yesterday can't continue like this. I don't understand why Carmen treated me so horribly. Why didn't you come out to defend me? Why did you close the door in my face as if I were a stranger? There was a long and tense silence on the other end of the line. When he finally spoke, his words broke my heart into 1,000 pieces. Mom, I think Carmen is right. We need our space as a couple. You've been a wonderful mother. But now I have to think about my marriage, my wife, the future we want to build together. Space? I screamed at him, unable to contain myself. What kind of space do you need to slam the door in your own mother's face? What did that woman do to you, Jason? What kind of poison did she put in your head to make you talk to me like this? It's not poison, Mom, it's maturity. It's realizing that I need to establish boundaries with you if I want my marriage to work. Carmen feels uncomfortable with your constant visits, with you showing up without warning, with you giving your opinion about how we live our lives. But I never gave opinions about their lives. I just visited you because I love you, because I want to be part of your happiness, I replied, with tears running down my face. And besides, constant visits? Jason had only been to the house twice since they moved. Well, but Carmen says those visits make her feel watched, supervised. She says she can't relax in her own house, knowing that at any moment you might show up. Every word that came out of his mouth was as if he had learned a script that she had taught him. Jason, are you listening to yourself? You're talking like you're a robot programmed by that woman. Where is my son? Where is the child who told me I was the most important thing in his life? My voice completely failed, and I couldn't continue talking for a few seconds. I grew up, Mom. I'm not that child anymore. Now I'm a married man, and I have to act like one. Carmen is my wife. She's the one I'm going to start a family with. The one I'm going to grow old with. You have to accept that you're no longer the number one woman in my life. Those words pierced my chest like a dagger. Son, I never wanted to compete with your wife. I just wanted to continue being your mother, to continue having a place in your life. But she's throwing me away like I'm an enemy. You're not an enemy, Mom, but you have to understand that things have changed. From now on, if you want to visit us, you have to call first and ask if it's a good time. You can't just show up without warning, as if it were your house. The house is mine, I finally snapped. I bought it with my 20 years of savings. I spent every last penny to give you that gift. That house exists because I sacrificed myself for you. And we thank you, Mom. But just because you paid for something doesn't mean it will be yours forever. When you donate something, you have to let go of it completely. The house is now mine and Carmen's. We live there. We pay for the utilities, we take care of it. I couldn't believe my own son was telling me these things. Jason, please reconsider. That woman is brainwashing you, manipulating you to take me out of your life. Don't you see what she's doing? All I see is a mother who can't accept that her son grew up and formed his own family. Mom, you need to create your own life, find your own activities, your own friends. You can't continue living through me. Living through you, Jason? I have my own life. I just wanted to continue being part of your life like any normal mother. Since when is maternal love something bad? It's not bad, but when it's excessive, it can be harmful. Carmen helped me see that. She studied psychology. She knows about these things. She explained to me that there are mothers who can't let go of their children and that destroys marriages. There was the truth. Carmen had been putting ideas in his head, manipulating him with cheap psychological theories to justify her cruelty. Son, that woman is manipulating you like you're a puppet. Don't you realize that all this started after I gave you the house? Don't you see that now that she got what she wanted, she's going to kick me out like a dog? Enough, Mom. I won't allow you to talk about my wife like that. Carmen is a wonderful woman who loves me and wants the best for our marriage. If you can't accept that, then maybe we need to distance ourselves for a while until you learn to respect her. Distance? You're threatening to distance yourself from my life if I don't accept the abuse of that viper? I was so indignant that the words came out of my mouth like bullets. It's not a threat, it's a consequence. Mom, I love you, but I won't allow anyone, not even you, to attack my wife or interfere in my marriage. The decision is in your hands. You accept the new rules, or we'll have to limit our contact. I hung up the phone without saying goodbye, trembling with rage and pain. My own son was giving me an ultimatum, choosing that manipulator over the woman who gave him life. I sat by the phone for hours, waiting for him to call me back to apologize, to tell me it had been a mistake, that he had spoken without thinking. But that call never came. That night, as I tried to find some peace in my room, the phone rang. For a moment, my heart jumped with hope. I thought it was Jason, but the voice I heard on the other end of the line made my blood freeze. It was Carmen, Mrs. Veronica. She told me with that fake and honeyed voice I knew so well. I hope you understood today's message. Jason told me about your conversation, and it seems to me that you still don't understand the new reality. What do you want from me? I asked her directly, without any desire for games or falsehoods. I want you to understand that things have changed forever. Jason is no longer a little boy who needs mommy's caresses. Now he's my husband, and I will protect our marriage from any interference, even if that interference comes from you. I never interfered in your marriage, Viper. All I did was love my son and try to have a normal relationship with you. Your concept of love is very toxic, Mrs. Veronica. True love knows when to let go, when to give space, but you're one of those possessive mothers who can't see their children grow up. That's why you need professional help. Professional help? You're telling me I need help? You, who are a manipulator who is destroying the relationship between a mother and her son? Jason is very worried about you. He says you seem very upset, very aggressive. We've been talking, and we think it would be good for you to consult a psychologist to help you process this new stage of your life. Her tone was so condescending that I wanted to reach through the phone and strangle her. Listen here, you wretch, I said with all the fury I had inside. I don't know what game you're playing, but I'm not going to let you take my son away from me. I paid for that house. That life you have, you owe to me, and you're not going to throw me away like a dog after getting what you wanted. There was an uncomfortable silence on the other end of the line, and then Carmen laughed with such a sinister laugh that it gave me chills. Mrs. Veronica, you still don't understand who you're messing with, but don't worry, you'll find out soon. And she hung up, leaving me with an echo of threat that terrorized me to the bone. Carmen's threatening words echoed in my head all night like a sinister echo. You still don't understand who you're messing with. There was something in her tone that was warning me of real danger. Something much worse than simply preventing me from seeing my son. But I was so focused on my pain that I couldn't imagine how far that evil woman was capable of going. During the following days, I tried to call Jason several times, but he never answered. When I finally managed to talk to him, his voice was getting colder and more distant. Mom, Carmen told me that you called her and that you said very ugly things to her. That's not right. My wife doesn't deserve to be treated like that. So, son, that woman is manipulating you. She's kicking me out of your life like garbage. Don't you see what she's doing? I begged desperately, but he already had a rehearsed answer for everything. What I see is that you can't accept that you're no longer the most important thing in my life. Mom, you need to seek professional help. Carmen and I are very worried about your behavior. Every word of his was exactly what she wanted him to say. A week later, I decided to make one last attempt. I prepared a special meal, all of Jason's favorite dishes since childhood, and I was going to his house hoping to be able to talk to him face to face, without the poisonous interference of his wife. But what I found left me completely in shock. When I arrived at the house, the first thing I noticed was that they had changed the front garden. The flowers I had planted with so much care had been uprooted and replaced with completely different plants. It was as if they wanted to erase any trace of my presence in that place. I rang the doorbell with my heart pounding, hoping that this time things would be different. But when the door opened, Carmen appeared with a smile that chilled my blood. It wasn't the fake and polite smile from before, but something much more sinister and calculated. Mrs. Veronica, what a surprise to see you here. I thought it was clear that you need to call before coming. I came to talk to my son, I said, trying to appear firm, even though inside I was trembling. And I brought this food I prepared especially for him. What a shame, she replied, without moving a muscle to let me pass. Jason isn't here. He went out shopping and won't be back until very late. Besides, he can no longer eat that greasy food you prepare. Now we follow a healthy diet that I designed for him. I'm taking care of his health, something you never did properly. Her words were like stabs straight to the heart. How dare she say I didn't take good care of my son's health? I raised him alone. I worked day and night to give him everything he needed. I sacrificed my own diet so he could eat well. Yes, but with an unbalanced and poor nutrition diet. I studied nutrition as part of my degree. I know what's good for him. You fed him pure carbohydrates and fat for years. It's time for someone who really loves him to take care of his well-being. Every word of hers was designed to make me feel like an incompetent mother. Carmen, enough of this theater. I know perfectly well what you're doing. You're trying to erase me completely from my son's life, replace me in everything, but I'm not going to allow it. Her expression changed completely, and for the first time I saw her true face without masks. You know what, Mrs. Veronica? You're right. Yes, I am replacing you in everything. Jason now has someone to take care of him, someone to pamper him, someone to worry about him for real. He doesn't need you for anything anymore. Nothing. You're an evil and manipulative viper. My son is going to realize what you really are, sooner or later." She laughed with a cruel laugh. "He's not your son anymore, Mrs. Veronica. He's my husband now. And I'm going to tell you something that's going to hurt you a lot. He's happy to be free from you. He confessed to me that he feels relieved not to have to deal with such a clingy and demanding mother anymore." Those words hit me like a hammer to the chest. Lie. Jason would never say something like that about me. Ask him yourself. But wait, you can't because he doesn't want to talk to you anymore. In fact, he asked me to tell you something very important. Carmen came closer to me, so close that I could feel her breath on my face. He asked me to tell you not to come back to this house, that he's tired of your dramas, your crying, your emotional manipulations. Lie. That's a lie, and you know it, I screamed at the top of my lungs. But she continued talking as if nothing had happened. Jason says you're a toxic mother who never let him grow up, who always treated him as if he were your personal property. He says that thanks to me, he was able to open his eyes and realize how harmful your relationship with him has been. I felt like my heart was being ripped from my chest, piece by piece. That can't be true. My son loves me. I know he loves me. You put those ideas in his head. Your son loved you when he was a dependent child who didn't know anything, but now he's a man who has known what true love is. The love of a woman who doesn't suffocate him, doesn't control him, doesn't manipulate him with guilt and emotional blackmail. I never manipulated him with blackmail. Everything I did was out of genuine love, maternal love. Your concept of love is very unhealthy. Mrs. Veronica, a healthy love doesn't suffocate, doesn't pretend to be the center of another person's universe. You're confusing love with obsession, and that's very dangerous. Suddenly, a person I didn't expect to see came out of the house. It was Harold, the next-door neighbor, an elderly gentleman who had always been very kind to me. He went to the garden to water the plants, and when he saw me, he greeted me with a warm smile. "Mrs. Veronica, how good to see you. How are you?" Carmen immediately changed her expression and put back on that false mask of kindness. "Hello, Mr. Harold. Mrs. Veronica came to visit, but unfortunately Jason isn't home." "Oh, what a shame," Harold replied, approaching the fence that separates the properties. "Mrs. Veronica, excuse me for intruding, but I've noticed I haven't seen you here for several weeks. I used to see you come more often to visit the kids." Carmen shot me a warning look, but I saw an opportunity to have a witness to her behavior. "Mr. Harold, the truth is I've been having some problems visiting my son. It seems like now I need to ask permission beforehand." "Permission?" Harold asked strangely. "But you're the mother. And besides, if I'm not mistaken, weren't you the one who bought this house for them?" Carmen's face turned red with anger, but she tried to control herself in front of the neighbor. "Of course, Mrs. Veronica can come whenever she wants. Mr. Harold, we just prefer that she let us know in advance to make sure we're home and can take care of her as she deserves." "Ah, well, that makes sense," Harold replied, not noticing the tension in the air. "Well, I'll leave you to resolve your affairs. Mrs. Veronica, give my regards to Jason." When Harold left, Carmen's mask fell completely again. "Look what you just did. Look how you try to embarrass me in front of the neighbors. This is exactly the kind of manipulative behavior I'm talking about with Jason. You use every opportunity to make me look bad." "I didn't try to make you look bad. I just told the truth, that you don't let me see my son freely. The truth is that you're a resentful and bitter woman who can't accept that her son doesn't need her anymore. But I have good news for you. Soon you won't have to worry about coming to bother us, because this house is going to be completely ours, without any connection to you." "What do you mean by that?" There was something in her tone that unnerved me. "I mean, Jason and I have been talking to a lawyer about the legal situation of this property. It seems that when donating a house, there are certain ways to transfer ownership completely to avoid future problems." Her smile was that of a predator who had found its prey. My blood froze in my veins. What kind of future problems? Problems like having a former owner who believes she still has rights over the property, who comes to bother whenever she feels like it, who acts as if it were her house when it's not anymore. The lawyer told us there are legal ways to resolve these situations permanently. "This house is in my name. I have all the original documents. I paid for it with my own money," I replied, trying to appear confident. even though inside I was terrified. Yes. But when you gave it to Jason, technically it became a donation, and donations have very specific legal implications. You'll find out soon exactly what those implications are. Her smile became even more evil. Are you threatening me? I'm not threatening you, Mrs. Veronica. I'm warning you. Soon you'll have no more excuses to come bother us. Because legally you won't have absolutely any right over this property. And when that happens, if you show up here uninvited, we can call the police and accuse you of trespassing. I was speechless, completely paralyzed by the horror of what I was hearing. Carmen's legal threats left me completely terrified, but I wasn't going to stand by watching that viper destroy my life. That same night, after not being able to sleep from the anguish, I decided to call my sister Ernestine to tell her what was happening. Ernestine was 2 years older than me. She had always been the more practical one in the family, and I desperately needed her advice. Veronica, are you crazy? She yelled at me over the phone when I told her the whole story. How did you get the idea to put a $180,000 house in your son's name without securing your rights? I never imagined something like this could happen, Ernestine. I did it out of love. I never thought my own son would turn his back on me like that. Much less that that woman would be so perverse, I replied, with my voice choked by tears. Love is all very well, sister, but love without intelligence is dangerous. You need to consult a lawyer tomorrow and find out what your legal rights are over that property. If you bought it, if you have all the receipts and original documents, there has to be something that can be done. Ernestine was right. The next day, I went to see the lawyer who had handled the purchase of the house, Mr. Victor Ramirez. He was an older man, very serious and professional, who had helped me with all the legal procedures. When I explained the situation, his expression became increasingly serious. Mrs. Veronica, I'm afraid your situation is very complicated. When you bought the house and put it in your son's name, you technically made a donation. According to the law, once a donation of real estate is made, the donor loses most of their property rights. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. But Mr. Lawyer, I have all the documents that prove I paid for that house with my own money. I have the bank receipts, transfers, everything. Yes. Those documents prove that you paid for the house, but that doesn't give you property rights if the deed is in another person's name. The law is very clear in this regard. Whoever appears on the deed as the owner is the legal owner, regardless of who paid for it. So there's nothing I can do. That woman can kick me out of the house I bought and I have no legal recourse? Tears began to roll down my cheeks uncontrollably. Well, there are some options, but they're limited and complicated. We could try to show that the donation was conditional. That is, that you gave the house with the implicit condition that you would always be welcome there as a mother. We could also argue that there was unjust enrichment if they exclude you completely after receiving the benefit. Would that work? For the first time in days, I felt a small spark of hope. It's difficult to prove, Mrs. Veronica. We would have to demonstrate that there were specific conditions at the time of the donation, and that those conditions were violated. Do you have any witnesses who can confirm the circumstances in which you made the gift? I thought for a moment. My sister Ernestine knew about my intentions. Several neighbors had seen me helping with the move and house repairs. Mr. Harold, the neighbor, had seen me visiting them regularly. That could help, but we would need something more concrete. Have you discussed the terms of the donation in writing? Text messages, emails, letters? No, sir. It was all verbal. I thought I was dealing with my son, with my family. I never imagined I would need to protect myself legally from them. My voice broke as I said those words. The lawyer looked at me with compassion. Mrs. Veronica, I'm going to be very honest with you. Your case is difficult, but not impossible. What worries me most is what you tell me about your son's wife's attitude. If she's really consulting lawyers to secure the property completely in her favor, they might be preparing some kind of preventive legal action. What kind of legal action? They could request a restraining order alleging harassment. They could formally change the locks and file a complaint for trespassing. Or they could even transfer the property to a trust or alter ownership in some way that makes any future claim from you even more difficult. Panic took hold of me completely. Sir, what do you advise me to do? First, document everything. Write a letter to your son explaining the circumstances in which you bought and donated the house, the expectations you had about maintaining a normal family relationship, and how those expectations have been violated. Send it by certified mail so you have proof that he received it. Then we'll wait for his response. If he acknowledges the circumstances of the donation in writing and is willing to resolve the conflict, we would have a basis for negotiation. If he refuses, or if the situation worsens, we'll have to evaluate whether it's worth filing a lawsuit. How much would a lawsuit cost? We could be talking about somewhere between $15,000 and $30,000, depending on the complexity of the case. And there's no guarantee we would win. The figure hit me like a slap in the face. I had no more savings. I had spent everything on the house. I left the lawyer's office feeling more lost than ever. I had risked all my financial security to give my son the greatest gift of my life. And now I had not only lost the money, but was about to lose my son too. That afternoon, I followed the lawyer's advice and sat down to write a letter to Jason. It took me hours to find the right words, to express my pain without seeming too dramatic, to explain my expectations without seeming demanding. The letter said, "My dear son Jason, I'm writing this letter to you because I feel we have lost the ability to communicate like the family we have always been. When I decided to buy that house for you and Carmen, I did it motivated by the purest love that can exist, the love of a mother who wants to see her son happy and prosperous. I spent all my savings, every penny I had saved during 20 years of work and sacrifice, because I thought there was no better investment than my only son's happiness. I never imagined that this gesture of love would become the reason to distance you from my life. When I gave you that house, I did it with the natural expectation that we would continue being a family, that I would still have a place in your life as your mother. I wasn't asking to live with you. I wasn't asking to control you. I wasn't asking for anything more than being able to visit you from time to time and maintain the loving relationship we had always had. Son, I know Carmen has influenced the way you see me, and although this hurts me deeply, I try to understand that you want to protect your marriage, but you can't protect it by destroying your relationship with your mother. You can't build your happiness on my suffering. I ask you, please, to reconsider this situation. I'm not asking you to choose between your wife and me. I'm just asking for a dignified place in your life, the place every mother deserves to have. If there's something I've done wrong, tell me, and I'll correct it. If there are ways to improve our relationship, I'm willing to do it. But don't expel me from your life as if I were a stranger who never loved you. This house I bought for you was purchased with love, with the hope that it would unite us even more as a family, not that it would keep me away from you forever. Please, my son, let's find a solution that allows us all to be happy. Your mother, who loves you unconditionally, Veronica." I took the letter personally to the post office and sent it with return receipt, exactly as the lawyer had advised me. In the following days, I anxiously waited for a response, checking my mailbox several times a day, jumping every time the phone rang. But the response I received was not what I expected and left me completely destroyed. A week after sending the letter, I received a response, but not from Jason. It was an official letter from a law firm representing my son and Carmen. When I opened the envelope and read the contents, I felt like the world had collapsed under my feet. The letter said, "Mrs. Veronica Lopez, we inform you that our clients, Mr. Jason Lopez and Mrs. Carmen Lopez, have contracted us to handle the matter related to the property located at the address you are aware of. Our clients have expressed concern about harassing behavior and unauthorized visits that you have been making to their private residence. We inform you that any future visit to said property without express invitation will constitute a violation of private property and will be reported to the corresponding authorities. Likewise, any unsolicited contact, whether by phone, in writing, or through third parties, will be considered harassment and will be treated with the full rigor of the law. Our clients wish to maintain a healthy family relationship, but this requires that you respect the boundaries they have established for their emotional well-being and the harmony of their marriage. We strongly recommend that you seek professional help to manage this transition in your family life. If you do not respect these conditions, we will be forced to request a temporary restraining order that could become permanent if the behavior persists." My hands were shaking so much as I read the letter that I could barely hold it. My own son had hired lawyers against me. He was threatening me with a restraining order. He was treating me like a dangerous stalker. Tears fell on the paper, staining the cruel words that seemed written by a stranger, not the child who had grown up in my arms. I immediately called Mr. Victor to show him the letter, When I finished reading it to him over the phone, there was a long silence before he spoke. "Mrs. Veronica, this is very serious. They're getting ahead of any legal action you might take. They're creating a record of problematic behavior to justify more drastic measures. But, Mr. Lawyer, I haven't harassed anyone. I just tried to maintain contact with my son like any normal mother would do." "I know that, Mrs. Veronica. But on paper, anything can seem like harassment. Unscheduled visits, insistent phone calls, even your letter asking for reconciliation can be interpreted as unwanted contact. So what can I do? Do I have to accept that I'll never see my son again? For now, you have to obey exactly what the letter says. You can't go to their house. You can't call them. You can't send more letters. Any violation of these conditions would give them the perfect justification to get that restraining order." I hung up the phone feeling completely defeated. Carmen had won. She had managed to remove me completely from my son's life using the legal system against me. But what I didn't know is that her arrogance would be her downfall. 2 days later, while I was sitting in my kitchen trying to understand my new reality, my doorbell rang. When I opened the door, I was surprised to see Harold, Jason and Carmen's neighbor, standing on my porch with a very worried expression. "Mrs. Veronica, excuse me for coming without warning, but I needed to talk to you about something very important." His voice sounded nervous, as if he was worried about something serious. "Of course, Mr. Harold. Please come in. Would you like some coffee?" I invited him to sit in my living room, grateful to have company after so many days of solitude. "Mrs. Veronica, I don't know if I should get involved in this, but my conscience won't let me rest. I've been a neighbor of that house for over 10 years, and I've seen everything that's happened since the kids moved in." "What have you seen, Mr. Harold?" "I saw how that woman treated you. I heard the shouting, the arguments, and it's not the first time I've seen something like this." Harold seemed very uncomfortable, as if he was struggling with something he knew but didn't want to say. "What do you mean it's not the first time?" Harold sighed deeply before answering. "Mrs. Veronica, that girl Carmen lived before in another house in the neighborhood, about 6 blocks from here. She lived with an elderly gentleman, Mr. Roger, who was a widower and very lonely. She moved into his house as his caregiver, and within a year she had managed to get him to change his will and leave everything to her. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. What happened to that gentleman? Mr. Roger died suddenly. The doctors said it was a heart attack, but his family always suspected something was wrong. When they wanted to investigate, Carmen had already sold the house and moved away. She took everything, the house, the savings, even the jewelry of Mr. Roger's deceased wife." "My God, are you sure of this?" "Absolutely sure, Mrs. Veronica. My sister-in-law Teresa was Mr. Roger's neighbor and told me the whole story." Carmen used exactly the same tactics. She won the old man's trust, convinced him that his family didn't love him, isolated him from all his loved ones, and when she had total control over him, she took over everything he had. The puzzle pieces began to fit together in my mind with frightening clarity. "Mr. Harold, that woman is doing the same thing with my son." "Mrs. Veronica, I think so. I've seen how Jason has changed since they got married. Before, he would greet me whenever he saw me. He was always a polite and respectful young man. Now he doesn't even look at me when I pass by the house. And I've noticed they've been receiving visits from people in suits, like lawyers or notaries." "When did you see these visits?" "Last week, 2 men came with briefcases and stayed there for over 2 hours. When they left, I heard Carmen talking on the phone in the garden. She said something about transferring everything before the old woman found out. My blood froze in my veins." "Are you sure she said that?" "As sure as I'm sitting here, Mrs. Veronica. And there's one more thing that worries me a lot. Yesterday I saw some men come with tools and change all the locks on the house. All of them. They even put a new lock on the back garden gate." "They changed the locks. Why would they do that?" "Mrs. Veronica, I think that woman is preparing for something, and I don't think it's good for you or your son. My sister-in-law Teresa told me that exactly the same thing happened with Mr. Roger. First she isolated him from his family, then she changed all the locks, and in the end, no one could come help him when his health deteriorated. Mr. Harold, do you think my son is in danger?" "Mrs. Veronica, I think that woman is very dangerous. I don't know exactly what she's planning, but I know it's nothing good. What happened to Mr. Roger could happen to anyone who gets in the way of her plans." I remained silent for several minutes, processing all this terrible information. My maternal instinct had told me from the beginning that there was something wrong with Carmen, but I never imagined it could be something so sinister. Mr. Harold, did Mr. Rogers' family try to file a lawsuit against Carmen? They tried, but it was too late. She had been very smart in covering her tracks. She had all the legal documents in order, and witnesses confirming that Mr. Roger was mentally competent when he changed his will. She even had recordings where he said he wanted to leave everything to her because his family didn't visit him. Recordings? Yes, that woman is very clever. She recorded conversations where she made him say what she wanted and then used those recordings as proof that he had made his own decisions. The family couldn't prove anything. Mr. Harold, would you help me save my son? The older man looked me directly in the eyes with a determination I hadn't expected. Mrs. Veronica, I saw how that viper destroyed Mr. Roger and his family. I'm not going to stand by and watch her do the same to you and Jason. Count on me for whatever you need. For the first time in weeks, I felt a spark of hope. I wasn't alone in this battle. And now I had information that could change everything. But what Carmen was planning was worse than we imagined. After Harold's revelation about Carmen's sinister past, my mind couldn't rest. That night I didn't sleep a minute thinking about all the signs I had ignored. All the times my instinct had warned me about that woman, but I chose to give her the benefit of the doubt. The next day, Harold came back early with more information that left me completely terrified. Mrs. Veronica, I spoke with my sister-in-law Teresa last night, and she told me more details about what happened with Mr. Roger. It turns out that before he died, the poor man tried to contact his family several times, but Carmen intercepted the calls and messages. She changed the house phone number and told Mr. Roger that his family had decided not to talk to him anymore. My God. So he died believing his own family had abandoned him? Exactly. And there's something worse, Mrs. Veronica. Teresa told me that the last weeks before Mr. Roger died, she always saw him very confused, as if he was taking medication that left him dazed. When she asked, Carmen told her that the doctor had prescribed pills for depression because he was very sad about his family's rejection. The implications of what Harold was telling me made my hair stand on end. Do you think she was drugging him? Teresa says Mr. Roger was always a very lucid and strong man, but in those last weeks he seemed like a zombie. He couldn't even maintain a coherent conversation. And curiously, it was during that period that he signed all the legal documents that gave Carmen total control over his inheritance. Mr. Harold, I have to do something to save my son. If that woman is capable of what you're telling me, Jason could be in real danger. He is, Mrs. Veronica. And I think the same process has already begun with him. Have you noticed any change in your son's behavior lately? Have you noticed if he seems more confused, more aggressive, or more distant than normal? I thought about the last phone conversations I had had with Jason. His voice sounded strange, as if he was reading a script, as if his words weren't really his. Yes, Mr. Harold. The last times I spoke with him, he seemed like a different person. He said things he had never said before. He used words that weren't his. That's exactly the same description Mr. Rogers' family gave. They felt like he had lost his personality and it had been replaced by another. But how can I help him if I can't even get close to him? Carmen's lawyers have threatened me with a restraining order if I try to contact him. Harold thought for a moment before answering. Mrs. Veronica, I think we have to be very smart. We can't confront Carmen directly because she's moved forward with her lawyers, but we can document everything that's happening and seek help from the competent authorities. What kind of authorities? My sister-in-law Teresa told me that after what happened with Mr. Roger, she discovered that there's a social services department that deals specifically with cases of abuse against vulnerable adults. They can investigate situations where there's suspicion of manipulation, isolation, or financial exploitation. For the first time in weeks, I felt there was a way forward. How can we contact these people? I already found out. It's called the Adult Protective Services Department, and they can conduct confidential investigations when there are reports of abuse. The best part is, they don't need definitive proof to start an investigation. They just need reasonable suspicion based on behavioral changes and suspicious circumstances. But will they believe me? Carmen has been very smart in making it seem like I'm the problem. That's why it's important we present the case correctly. Not as a family dispute between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law, but as a pattern of predatory behavior that has already occurred before. I have the name and address of Mr. Rogers' family. Teresa believes they would be willing to talk to the authorities about what happened to him. Would they really do that? Teresa says Mr. Rogers' family never got over what happened. They always felt guilty for not being able to save him. If they know there's another person in danger, I think they'll want to help so it doesn't happen again. That same afternoon, we went together to the Adult Protective Services office. The social worker who attended us was named Stella Morales, a middle-aged woman with a serious but compassionate expression. When I told her the whole story, from the house gift to the legal threats, she took detailed notes without interrupting. Mrs. Lopez, what you're describing to me definitely fits a pattern of isolation and manipulation that we see in cases of financial exploitation. The fact that there's a precedent with another victim makes the case even more concerning. So you can help me? We can open an investigation, but I need you to understand that this process takes time and must be conducted very carefully. If this person really has the history you describe, she's very dangerous and very smart. We can't alert her that we're investigating until we have enough information to act. What kind of information do you need? We need to document any unusual changes in your son's behavior, any suspicious financial transactions, any evidence of isolation from family and friends. We'll also contact the previous victim's family to confirm the details of the case. Miss Stella, my son could be in immediate danger. Isn't there anything you can do faster? I understand your concern, Mrs. Lopez, but if we act too quickly and without solid evidence, she could disappear with all your son's assets before we can stop her. We've seen cases where premature confrontations result in the perpetrator accelerating their plans. Harold intervened in the conversation. Miss, I live next door to them and I can observe and document any suspicious activity. Would that help? Definitely. We need you to document any visits from lawyers, notaries, or bank officials. Also, any changes in your son's daily routine, any signs of deterioration in his physical or mental state, any evidence that he's being medicated or manipulated. What if she hurts my son while we're investigating? Stella looked at me seriously. Mrs. Lopez, if at any moment you have reason to believe your son is in immediate physical danger, you can call the police. But for cases of psychological manipulation and financial exploitation, the legal process is slower because the evidence is harder to obtain. We left the office with an action plan. Harold would be responsible for monitoring and documenting everything that happened at the house. I would be responsible for gathering all the documents related to the purchase of the property, and Stella would be in charge of contacting Mr. Rogers' family to confirm the details of his case. But that same night, we discovered that Carmen had already noticed we were investigating, and her reaction was much more violent and dangerous than we expected. Harold called me around 10 p.m. with panic in his voice. Mrs. Veronica, something terrible is happening next door. I heard very loud screaming, as if there was a fight, and then everything went silent. I'm looking out the window and I haven't seen a single light on for 2 hours. Do you think she did something to my son? I don't know, Mrs. Veronica, but I have a very bad feeling. I think we should call the police to check on their welfare. But won't that make things worse? She's already threatened me with a restraining order. Mrs. Veronica, if something happens to Jason and we didn't do anything, we'll never forgive ourselves. I'd rather the police come and find everything normal than for tomorrow to be too late. He was right. I called 911 and reported that I was concerned about my son's welfare, because a neighbor had heard screaming and then the house had gone completely silent and dark. What the police discovered when they arrived at the house that night changed everything forever and finally exposed Carmen's truly evil. Sure. When the police arrived at the house that night, what they found was even worse than Harold and I had imagined. The officers had to force entry because no one answered their knocks. And when they finally got in, they found my son Jason on the living room floor, unconscious and with foam coming out of his mouth. Carmen was sitting calmly on the couch watching television as if nothing had happened. But when she saw the police arriving, she started acting like a consummate actress. Thank God you came. My husband suddenly got very sick. I think he had some kind of seizure. The paramedics arrived immediately and took Jason to the hospital in an ambulance. I ran after them with my heart pounding, praying to God that my son would be okay. Harold came with me to the hospital, holding my hand while I cried desperately. At the hospital, doctors worked for hours to stabilize Jason. When the doctor finally came out to talk to me, his expression was very serious. Mrs. Lopez, your son is stable, but his condition is very concerning. Blood tests show very high levels of sedatives in his system, much higher than would be normal for any prescribed treatment. Sedatives? What kind of sedatives? A combination of benzodiazepines and other medications normally used for severe anxiety disorders, but in doses that could be lethal. Does your son have a history of mental problems that would require this type of medication? No, doctor. My son has always been mentally stable. He never needed psychiatric medication. The puzzle pieces were coming together in the most frightening way possible. Mrs. Lopez, I have to ask you something very delicate. Is there a possibility that someone administered these medications to him without his knowledge? Before I could answer, Carmen appeared running down the hospital corridor, acting like the perfect concerned wife. How is my husband? What did the doctor say? What happened? The doctor looked at her with suspicion. You're the wife? I need to talk to you about your husband's medication. The levels of sedatives in his blood suggest a significant overdose. Was he taking any prescribed medication? Carmen looked completely surprised, as if it were the first time she had heard anything like this. No, doctor. He doesn't take any medication. He's completely healthy. It must have been some kind of attack or allergic reaction to something he ate. Ma'am, the levels we found are not consistent with an allergic reaction. This indicates direct ingestion of sedative medications, and in very dangerous quantities. Well, I don't know what to tell you, doctor. I was with him all afternoon and he was perfectly normal. Suddenly he got very sick and lost consciousness. It was very scary. Her acting was so convincing that it almost made me doubt my own suspicions. At that moment, one of the officers who had been at the house approached. Doctor, can we talk privately about the test results? We have some questions about the circumstances of the incident. As the doctor spoke with the police, I approached Carmen with all the anger I had been accumulating for weeks. I know what you did to my son, Viper. I know you were drugging him, just like you did with Mr. Roger. Her mask fell for a second, and I saw a flash of panic in her eyes. But she immediately returned to her performance. Mrs. Veronica, I don't know what you're talking about. My husband got sick suddenly and you come here accusing me of horrible things. This is exactly the kind of obsessive behavior I told the lawyers about. Liar. You were poisoning him to control him, just like you did with that poor man who died because of you. The police officer who had been talking to the doctor intervened. Mrs. Lopez, we need you to calm down. We understand you're very upset, but these accusations are very serious. Officers, investigate this woman. She's done this before. She killed a man named Roger to steal his money, and now she's trying to do the same with my son. Carmen immediately started crying in a very dramatic way. Officers, this lady has been harassing me for weeks. We have lawyers involved, because she can't accept that her son is married and has formed a family. Now that my husband is sick, she comes to accuse me of terrible things. The officer looked at me with a serious expression. Mrs. Lopez, do you have any proof of these accusations you're making? Yes, I have proof. There are witnesses who saw what this woman did to Mr. Roger. There's an ongoing investigation at Adult Protective Services. This woman is a criminal. At that moment, Harold arrived running with a look of total panic. Mrs. Veronica, something terrible happened. I just spoke with my sister-in-law, Teresa, about Mr. Roger's family. They're all dead. A chilling silence fell over the hospital corridor. What did you say, sir? Asked the officer. Mr. Roger's family, those who were going to testify about what happened to the old man, they died last night in a car accident. Teresa says the police are investigating because the car appears to have been sabotaged. Carmen went pale as paper, but tried to maintain her composure. Officers, I don't know what these people are talking about. I don't know any Mr. Roger. I don't understand anything about car accidents. The officer looked at Harold with more attention. Sir, are you a witness to something related to this situation? Yes, officer. I live next to this woman, and I've seen very suspicious things. Visits from lawyers, lock changes, and I've heard phone conversations where she talks about property transfers and eliminating problems. Eliminating problems? The officer asked with more interest. Yes. 2 days ago I heard her talking on the phone in the garden. She said something about how witnesses wouldn't be a problem anymore, and that everything would be definitively resolved soon. Carmen could no longer maintain her calm facade. That's a lie. This gentleman is making things up. They're all ganging up against me because they don't accept that Jason chose me. At that moment, the doctor returned with more results. Officers, There's something else you need to know. We found traces of other medications in the patient's system, including some that are used to induce confusion and memory loss. This pattern is consistent with intentional and prolonged poisoning. Doctor, asked the officer, how long would it take for these drugs to accumulate in his system? Based on the levels we found, I would say he's been receiving medication regularly for at least 2 or 3 months. Exactly the time that had passed since Jason started behaving strangely with me, exactly when Carmen needed to turn my son into an obedient zombie. The officer addressed Carmen with a much more serious expression. Ma'am, we're going to need you to come with us to answer some questions. We'll also need to search your house looking for evidence related to these drugs. You can't do that. I haven't done anything wrong. I have rights. I want to call my lawyer. You have the right to call your lawyer, ma'am. But we also have the right to investigate attempted murder. When I heard those words, attempted murder, I finally understood how close I had come to losing my son forever. Carmen didn't just want my money and my house. She wanted to eliminate Jason after gaining total control over his assets, exactly as she had done with Mr. Roger. But this time her plan failed, and what they found when they searched the house would reveal the true extent of her evil. When the police searched the house I had bought with so much love, they found evidence that revealed the true extent of Carmen's evil. In her bedroom, they discovered a safe full of falsified documents, including a will from Jason that named her as the sole beneficiary of all his assets, life insurance policies worth $500,000 that he had never knowingly signed, and most frighteningly, bottles of medications with altered labels that she had been mixing into his food. They also found a detailed diary where Carmen had meticulously documented her plan to get rid of me and then eliminate Jason once she gained total control of his estate. In an entry dated just 2 weeks earlier, she had written, "The stupid old woman won't be a problem after tonight." The witnesses from the previous case were successfully eliminated. Once Jay is out of the way, I'll have over $700,000 between the house, insurance, and bank accounts. Final destination, Costa Rica, where no one will be able to find me. But what terrified me most was a detailed list of other possible targets she had been investigating. Older men with valuable properties and dysfunctional families who would be easy to manipulate. My son and I were just 2 more victims in a chain of crimes she had been planning for years. While Carmen was arrested and charged with attempted murder, fraud, document falsification, and suspicion of murder in Mr. Rogers' case, I stayed at the hospital day and night taking care of my son. The doctors told me the recovery would be slow because the medications had seriously affected his nervous system and memory. When Jason finally woke up completely, after 3 days in an induced coma, the first thing he did was look at me with tears in his eyes and whisper, "Mom, forgive me. I don't know what got into me. I don't know why I said those horrible things to you. I feel like I was living a nightmare where I couldn't control my own words or my own thoughts." "My son," I said while caressing his pale face, "you have nothing to apologize for. That evil woman was poisoning you. She was controlling your mind with drugs. Nothing you said or did was really your decision." "Mom, I remember trying to resist, trying to call you, but every time I tried, I felt very confused and very tired. It was like my brain was wrapped in cotton, and she was always there telling me that you were the problem, that you wanted to control my life, that I had to distance myself from you to be happy. Do you remember when all this started, son?" I think it started right after we moved to the house. At first I thought they were vitamins, what she gave me at breakfast. She said she wanted to take care of my health, that she wanted to make sure I was strong and healthy for our future together. But after a few weeks I started feeling very strange, like I wasn't myself. The doctors confirmed that Jason had been a victim of a sophisticated form of psychological and chemical poisoning. The medications Carmen was giving him not only caused confusion and memory loss, but also made him more susceptible to manipulation and less capable of forming independent judgments. "It's like chemical brainwashing," the doctor explained. The drugs created a mental state where the patient maintains the appearance of normalcy externally, but internally loses the ability to resist the influence of the person controlling them. As Jason slowly recovered, I faced the legal reality of recovering my house and my rights. Carmen's lawyers had managed to temporarily transfer the property to her name through false documents and Jason's signature under the influence of medications, but with the evidence of poisoning and the documentation found in her possession, the courts immediately canceled all the transactions. Harold became a key witness in the trial against Carmen. His testimony about the suspicious activities he observed, combined with the evidence found in the house and the medical testimony about Jason's condition, built a solid case against her. During the trial, we discovered that Carmen operated under multiple identities. Her real name was Cristina Valdez, and she had a criminal record in other states for similar cases of fraud and exploitation of vulnerable people. Mr. Rogers' case was just one of at least 5 known cases where she used the same tactics. Social worker Stella Morales testified about the pattern of predatory behavior she had observed and how cases like this were more common than people imagined. Financial predators like the defendant are experts at identifying vulnerable victims and using sophisticated psychological techniques to gain control over them, she explained to the jury. When the verdict finally came out, Carmen was sentenced to 35 years in prison for attempted murder, aggravated fraud, document falsification, and multiple charges related to financial abuse of vulnerable adults. She was also ordered to pay full restitution for all damages caused. But more important than legal justice was the recovery of my relationship with my son. Jason needed months of therapy to fully process what he had experienced and recover his normal personality. There were difficult days where he struggled with guilt and shame for having been so easily manipulated. "Mom," he told me one afternoon while we were sitting in the garden of the house I bought for him, "I feel like an idiot for falling into her trap. How could I have been so blind?" Son, that woman was a professional criminal. She had perfected her techniques over years with other victims. It wasn't you who spoke or made decisions. It was her controlling your mind through drugs and psychological manipulation. But I should have suspected something. I should have noticed that my thoughts weren't normal, that my feelings toward you had changed so drastically. Jason, the doctors explained to me that the medication she was giving you specifically blocked the ability to have those moments of clarity. It was like being under hypnosis 24 hours a day. Gradually, my real son returned completely. His natural smile, his gentle humor, his genuine filial love, everything came back as if he had awakened from a long and horrible nightmare. Harold became a very dear friend to both of us. His courage in documenting Carmen's activities and his willingness to testify had been crucial in saving Jason's life and bringing that criminal to justice. "Mr. Harold," I told him one afternoon, "I don't know how to thank you for everything you did for us. You saved my son's life." "Mrs. Veronica, when I saw what that evil woman did to poor Mr. Roger, and I couldn't help him, I swore that if I saw something similar, I wouldn't stay silent. I couldn't allow her to destroy another family like she destroyed Mr. Rogers." Today, 2 years after that nightmare, Jason and I have a stronger relationship than ever. He lives in the house I bought for him, but now the doors are always open to me. We cook together on Sundays. We take care of the garden we almost lost, and we talk openly about the nightmare we lived through. The experience taught us that true family love can survive even the most malignant attacks, but it also taught us to be on guard against people who take advantage of others' trust and generosity. Carmen could have taken my money, my house, and she almost took my son from me, but she couldn't destroy the love that unites us. And although I lost all my life savings buying that house, I recovered something much more valuable: the certainty that my son truly loves me, and that together we can overcome any adversity that life presents to us. The house that was once a symbol of my greatest sacrifice became the place where we learned that love, when it's real, always finds a way to triumph over evil. And every time I walk through that door that was once closed to me, I remember that the greatest wealth is not in the walls we build, but in the bonds that keep us united as a family. Jason now works as a financial advisor, specializing in helping elderly people protect their assets from predators like Carmen. He often tells his clients, "My mother's love and a neighbor's courage saved my life. Don't be ashamed to ask for help when something doesn't feel right." As for me, I volunteer at Adult Protective Services, sharing my story with other families who are going through similar situations. I've learned that Carmen's case wasn't unique. There are many predators out there who specifically target loving families and exploit the bonds between parents and children. But I've also learned that when good people stand together, evil rarely wins. Harold still lives next door, and he's become like the father Jason never had and the brother I always needed. We have family dinners every week, and we always toast to the truth that set us free and the love that brought us back together. The house I bought with all my heart's love became much more than a building. It became a testimony that a mother's love can overcome any darkness, and that sometimes the greatest gifts we give our children aren't material things, but the courage to fight for what's right and the wisdom to know the difference between love and manipulation. And every night, when I turn off the lights in my own little home, I sleep peacefully knowing that my son is safe, that justice was served, and that our family bond is stronger than any scheme that evil people might devise against it. The American dream isn't just about owning property or achieving financial success. It's about protecting the people we love and never giving up on family, no matter how dark things might seem. Epilogue. 3 years have passed since Carmen's conviction. She remains in federal prison where she's serving her sentence. Occasionally, we receive updates that she's attempted to manipulate other inmates and guards. But the prison system is now aware of her tactics. Jason met someone new, a kind, genuine woman named Sarah who works as a nurse. When he first introduced her to me, I was naturally cautious. But Sarah's authenticity shines through in everything she does. She insisted on getting to know me independently of Jason, and she often brings her own elderly grandmother to our Sunday dinners. The house has been renovated. We painted it bright yellow, a color that Carmen had forbidden, claiming it was too cheerful. We planted a new garden together and installed a bench where Harold joins us for morning coffee. Most importantly, we've created what we call the Harold Protocol, a neighborhood watch system where neighbors look out for elderly residents and families who might be vulnerable to predators. We've helped identify and stop 3 other potential scammers in our community. Jason proposed to Sarah last month, and this time, I know in my heart that his choice comes from a place of freedom and genuine love. The wedding is planned for next spring, in the garden of the house that nearly broke us apart, but ultimately brought us closer together. Sometimes the greatest gifts we give our children aren't the ones we plan, but the lessons we learn together about resilience, forgiveness, and the unbreakable power of authentic love.